Hey, what's going on, Facebook? This is George. It is another Friday, and let me just see if this is actually working. Oh, here we go. Awesome. Everything is up and running. Um, it's another Friday, and this is another live video um, at George's Space Chat. And I am very excited about today's video because I am actually quite out of my league. This is I'm doing something um, that I don't necessarily know that well. So that makes it very exciting to me for me. Um, just bear with me. I gotta switch a couple settings over here. Click this over there and hope for the best. Anyway, if anybody is checking this out online, if anybody is out there, send me a comment. Write me a note in the comments. It's always good to know who you're talking to. Um, and sometimes I can read them, sometimes I cannot. So bear with me if I don't reply right away or respond right away. I'm also dealing with like several screens here. And hey, what's going on, Matt Carroll? Good to see you. Um, Thanks for liking. Anyway, so I am working with several screens here, trying to figure out which is the best way and how to navigate all of this stuff. Um, as I said, I am somewhat out of my comfort zone today because I am talking about a particular style of music that I am not that familiar with, but that I have great respect for, and where I definitely understand the lineage, or I shouldn't say I understand the lineage, but I understand how it influences um, our our sensibilities and our dare I say, communal aesthetic. Hey, what's going on, Sadi? John McFall, good to see you all. Matthew Carroll, I am also excited for today's chat, believe me. So, and as always, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. Um, if you want to get in touch with me concerning lessons and or recordings, please email me at george@georgefarmer.com. If you want to contribute to the cause, I have put my Venmo and PayPal information into the description of this video, as I do every time. Any contribution, any donation is very much appreciated. Um, and I also want to shout out the upcoming show for the month of for October, and that is next week. I'm going to do Broadway Uncovered Part 2. Last week we did Broadway Uncovered Part 1, which is a panel discussion and or conversation between me and guests that I invite who happen to be bass players working in a musical theater setting. And all of these players defy the sort of stereotype that you have to be white and male in order to succeed on Broadway, in order to work in a musical theater setting. So I thought it would be really interesting to feature all of these players. Yeah, by far not the only ones, but these are the ones that were available or that I thought of right away, and where also I thought there might be some interesting just some interesting content, thoughts, ideas, etc., etc. The idea behind the Broadway Uncovered series is to give other musicians who defy that particular stereotype some real life examples that you can also make it in this business or in this part of the business. Uh, so next week we will have the great Tom Barney. We'll have the great Melissa Slocum, the great Erie O'Farrell, and last but not least, the great Winston Roy will be joining me in a panel discussion and or conversation. And that's all the housekeeping that I have for now. I haven't figured out what to do in November. There's this incredibly important election coming up. Um, so I am also a little bit perhaps um, I'm suffering a little bit from analysis paralysis. Quincy Jones coined that term. Um, that I just have a hard time seeing past November 3rd at this point. But I'll figure something out. I did have, and this is an interesting announcement. This has happened in the last couple days. I had a couple great online conversations with a fantastic musician. I don't want to give away his name yet. And I think that I would. Uh, he has already agreed to a small, a short interview, so to speak. Um, I'm gonna call that the follow up, and it's gonna, hopefully there are going to be more of those. But this is going to be the follow up with dot dot dot. Again, I don't want to give it away just yet. But needless to say, I am super excited that this guy even knows who I am. To be honest, I'm not putting myself down here, but this is. I'm very excited that this someone from his stature and someone from his output would consider talking to me. Um, that is really really cool. What's going on, Joey Shorji? Good to see you. I hope you're well. So this is the, as I said, this is a little bit of housekeeping that I have for now. Um, bear with me. I am in the process of putting together another program for November. You know, together with perhaps more follow-up videos. Stuff like that. But we do have this looming election coming up, and we need to do the best we can to get the current occupant of the White House out, and in no uncertain terms. So vote blue. Make sure that we crush this dude and all the people that enable him. Um, and that's where we are right now. So let me get to the subject of today's live video, and I coined it. I put the title on there: "The Gospel According to Ruben." And for those who don't know, I am talking about Ruben Rodriguez, the incredibly prolific and great bass player. Um, I believe originally from the Bronx, lives here in New York, and I want to I want to share my introduction to Ruben's music and to his artistry, because I thought that when preparing this today's video, I thought that that was the first thing that came to my mind, and I thought that would make for a good story. Uh, I believe it was either 2009 or 2010, um, somewhere in that time period. I was doing a show called Memphis, and good friend of mine, guitar player by the name of John Banthal, um, sends me a text saying, "Listen, Ruben Rodriguez, the bass player, is wondering if he could come by and check out the show, possibly sub for you." And one thing, the way that John put it was, it might also be interesting for you to meet this one of the most prolific bass players that we have right now. And first of all, John was absolutely right. Ruben is one of the most prolific bass players that we have right now. His recordings are, I would say, easily in the hundreds, if not in the thousands. Um, Never, and that is something that I greatly respect, that I strive for in my career planning. Um, so that totally intrigued me, and at the same time, it did also kind of bring home the point that at the time, publications, Bass Player Magazine, etc., etc., when asked about um, the prolific studio musicians, there was never even a mention of someone from the Afro-Cuban music scene. There's hardly ever a mention from African American musicians, black musicians. It was usually, and I'm not putting anybody else down, because all work is good work, and I believe that if one person works, we all benefit from that. Nevertheless, it was noticeable that that part of the industry and that part of the music business did not get a lot of play. And yet, at the same time, we have pop artists, be it J Lo, be it a Mark Anthony, be it whoever, Santana, who have huge hits, and it's all coming out of the Afro-Cuban music um, lineage, heritage, history, etc., etc. So I thought that that was an incredible oversight, um, that a publication like Bass Player Magazine, and it was by far not the only one. Just there was never any mention, or there was very little of that. Let me put it this way, because never would be too much, but very little, and it certainly was not put in the same category as the regular output from white players. So I that intrigued me, and I had heard about Ruben. I had been to a clinic, I believe, at Base Day. That again very specifically featured Ruben, and where he was talking about Afro-Cuban music, the history of it, and all of that. And needless to say, his command of the musical language, his knowledge of the style of the music, blew me away. It was incredibly affirming to see uh, somebody up there on a stage at a clinic, um, who looked like me, and who was at was dealing with musical issues and ideas and concepts that were so complex, and at the same time that grooved like hell, and made everybody move right away. We couldn't even help ourselves in the audience. So um, all of that, together with John Benthal's introduction, intrigued me, and I wanted to get in deeper. And this is the reason why I'm saying I'm doing something that takes me out of my comfort zone. I am by no means a specialist when it comes to Afro-Cuban music. I have studied it to a certain degree. I appreciate it tremendously, but I don't know the language, as it were, really well. Nevertheless, I do have enough wherewithal to listen to someone like Ruben, and listen to how he plays, and what that actually all entails. So that that was sort of my introduction to him, and of course, Ruben came. He checked out the show. He checked out, a couple other shows as well, I believe. Um, and we have struck up a friendship that has lasted to this day, for which I am tremendously grateful, because it has enriched me, and it has enriched my playing a lot. There is right now, the show that I was doing before the shutdown, before the pandemic hit, Into Proud, is the stage. Just to give you guys an idea of how how influential this is, and how influential this particular friendship and relationship perhaps is. Um, so Into Proud's stage door lets out on, I believe, 46th Street. I always get them confused, but I think it's 46th Street. Um, and then you cross the street, and there's, I believe, the hotel, the Edison Hotel, which has a bar in its first floor called the Rum House, and the Rum House has live music. So every night when I'm after the show, when I leave the theater, there is kind of a shortcut that takes you through the Edison Hotel when you want to avoid the crowds on Times Square. Um, and you kind of get you hear the music coming out of the rum house, and the word on the street is, and this is, not trying to knock anybody who's plays there, but word on the street is that um if the music sounds really good, it's Ruben playing bass. And that is the truth. So needless to say, like every time I go through that I take that shortcut through the hotel. My ears are really big, and I'm trying to see, is Ruben going to be in today? So, and I've caught him a couple times there already, and it's true. The music sounds fantastic, and it is noticeable from the first time you hear it. So that is yeah, that's just to give you an idea of how great that actually how immediate also that that the reaction is to when he plays. um I did write down a couple notes, so bear with me while I check in with them every now and then. um the one word that comes to mind when you hear Ruben play is joy, right? And if he is going to join me later on, I will, definitely try to bring that up. Um, so that is something that is noticeable. And the other thing that I want to say, because I see him waiting in the guest room. The other thing that I wanna say is that when I live in Brooklyn right now, and I used to live uptown in Harlem. At the time, Harlem was not quite as gentrified as it is now, but it was getting there. And so there were a lot of bodegas. There were a lot of there was a lot of activity on the street. And when you went into the bodegas, which where mostly Spanish was being spoken, um, you heard a lot of Mark Anthony. You heard a lot of Afro-Cuban modern artists, and unbeknownst to me, for all the time that I was living up there, I was listening to a lot of Ruben Rodriguez, and I listened to a lot of his recordings without knowing it actually. So let me see if I can bring him on right away. Um, hey, what's going on, Ruben?
¿Qué pasa?
De nada.
How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm very good. What's going on, man?
Man, I was having issues. I thought I would be able to hook up my laptop, but for some reason it froze. And
Oh, don't even worry
yeah,
about it.
again, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for joining
Well,
today.
thank you for the invite.
Oh, are you kidding me? This is a treat. This is a real treat. This means the world to me. Um, and I
Thank
know
you,
this means the world to a lot of people watching us out there.
and to me.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Listen, if you guys, if you hear this, give me a thumbs up, or send me the location from where you are watching. Put it in the comments. Let's do the whole Berkeley webinar thing. Let's see if that works out. Um, Put it in the comments. I'm gonna try to catch this live. Um, anyway, so Ruben, I just did a little introduction on you and how we met. You came. I think you came to watch Memphis one time,
Memphis,
right?
we met,
Right.
yeah.
You came to watch Lady Day, and I believe also. Did you ever
Oh,
come watch Ain't Too Proud?
no,
No.
I mean,
Okay. Well,
we
of course.
tried, to schedule that.
Right. 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 Okay. Cool.
Hopefully, I will be able to do it one day, so that you'll be my fifth godfather in the seat.
Listen, that would be incredibly cool. I would love to be your godfather. That's I got no problem with that.
Thank you.
But listen, let's get into it, because the one thing that I kind of touched on in the introduction is that back then when John Benthal made that connection, right, between the two of us,
Yeah, I think it was
and
him. Yes.
yeah, and he pointed out that you are one of the most prolific bass players in town at the time, and that without wanting to put you on the spot or anything
Right.
like that, like don't misunderstand where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was absolutely right, and I
Thank.
think that for too long, the whole Afro-Cuban part of, or the Afro-Cuban sound of New York has kind of been has been relegated to a backseat for whatever reason. Like there's always, well, there's this scene, there's that scene, and then there is Afro-Cuban scene, right? um Nevertheless, it seems that there is a lot of influence that comes from the Afro-Cuban music and goes into everything else, and I couldn't think of anyone better equipped to ask that question, like how do you see that influence, where do you see it, where historically, give us sort of a rundown. Do you think that influence is still there? Like, is it still happening right now? I know that there used to be Kai 54, and all of that.
Right.
um like, what is the scene like now?
Oh, the scene is almost non-existent.
Check that out. Okay.
But going to the influences thing and the cross pollination of the music.
Yes, yes.
Um, speaking with guys like Mario Balsa, who was basically the creator of what they call Latin jazz now,
Right,
which at that time it was basically what we call instrumental mambos, like
right,
a mambo rhythm section, and a mambo groove with
right,
jazz soloists.
right,
So he came here from Cuba in the 30s, in the mid to late 30s, and he saw a lot of big bands up in Harlem. It was a lot of clubs. There was a lot of big bands,
mm,
swing bands,
right,
and he saw and he met a lot of Latinos playing in
right,
those groups.
right, right,
Even way back when,
right.
so they've always instrumentalists.
Hmm.
Have always been like at least a major part of them that came out of Puerto Rico. I know this the Puerto Rico end,
Right, right,
and some of the Cuban,
right,
some of the Cuban stuff too. Those guys were prepared, so they're like legit musicians. They were classically trained,
right,
read well,
right,
and got a lot of those gigs.
right. Of
And
course,
got
of course,
gigs, played well, read well, and because basically at that time, swing was a dance music.
of course, of
The
course.
popular at the time. So yeah, there were soloists, but it was more song based,
Right, 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 right,
lyrics
right.
and stuff, So and then he married in the 40s, sometime early 40s, Mario Balsa and his brother-in-law Machito. Was a famous band leader, they married the two.
Right,
Having a big band, that was comparable to any of the big bands at the time, Ellington,
right,
Count Basie, whatever, they were right up there along with them. You
right,
know,
right,
I,
right.
I don't remember if I sent you any of that stuff or not, but
You send you send me a lot of stuff, so I tried to get
yeah,
through it.
all right.
I
No,
wasn't able to get through all of it yet.
no, I didn't expect you. I didn't expect you to, but at some point, I'm sure you probably will.
Oh
You know,
yeah, yeah, most definitely. Yeah,
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 and
yeah.
so a lot of and we're talking about the bebop era,
Right,
like in the 40s when
right,
the bebop and stuff, things had sort of moved, evolution. I guess you could call it evolution. Everything moved up a notch, so that we
right,
were in the pop scene already in the 40s.
right,
A lot of the bebop musicians would play along with be part of those orchestras,
right,
section, and then and then they get their time to shine as
right.
well.
Of course,
So
of course.
they'll play this what they know over the Latin rhythms.
Got it. And
So
then all of a sudden that melange, or that combination was created out of those particular ingredients.
right, and those bands, Mario Balsa he played at that in that because he was like multi instrumentalist. He was a clarinet at the symphony in Havana Symphony.
Right.
And he came here playing saxophone. I think he played saxophone while in Macho's band, in Machito's band.
Right.
But he also, prior to that, he was musical director for Cab Calloway, and was getting guys like he got Dizzy Gillespie on those gigs. You know,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
young
Yeah. Yeah.
kid around looking for gigs, and then he also led Chick Webb's band.
Well, damn. Okay.
Yeah, and there was a story going around that Mario Balsar, he saw a young girl singing at the Apollo way back when, and he recommended her.
Mm.
I've heard he told me this himself.
Okay.
He recommended her, and she recorded her first, #1 single with that band was a Tisket a Tasket, and that was Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh, that is crazy. That is
So
crazy. So
yeah,
it's
I mean, I know that
it's
there are pictures of pictures exist of him in the band with both Chick Webb and Ella.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. So
that,
it's just completely in the sound, in the fabric of New York culture, of jazz, of all of it. It's not even side by side the two styles and genres. It's right in there. It's
yeah,
part of it.
it definitely is.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so I mean, I'm of course 40. I I wasn't even a twinkle in Daddy's eye.
yeah. Neither one of us.
So, but that continued through the 50s and the 60s. I was born in the 60s.
Hmm.
Uh, and I remember hearing a lot of that stuff, in the radio. I mean, the big band era, the only ones that were really around were the three, Tito Puente's band.
Right.
We had a big, he started in 1949,
Okay.
but yeah, and in the 50s and the 60s, he was really hot.
Right.
And there's another singer named Tito Rodriguez,
Okay.
who also had a big band and great arrangers, because Tito was a great arranger. A
Mm.
lot of Tito Puente rather. A lot of I mean, a lot of people don't even know that he's a Juilliard graduate. You know,
No.
so
There
and
you go.
he played vibes, he played piano, classical piano, saxophone,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he was mainly a drummer.
Right. 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 Right.
Drummer. So and he did a lot of writing for his group and for other people as well. Machito had a guy named Rene Hernandez, who's basically, who was like writing like Duke and stuff,
Yeah.
but with clave,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. 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 I've heard his name before.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
So and that stuff was instrumental to me. I was growing up,
Right.
I was listening to that at home, and like in my grandma's house in the kitchen, she always
Right.
had the Latin stations on the radio.
Right. Right.
And then I had my uncles. They were taking over the living room, and you can hear Motown
Right.
and some of the rock stuff, pop music of the era.
Right.
So all that,
All those influences
well,
came
I was
together.
absorbing that stuff as growing up, and
Right.
I mean, there's a for the Motown thing. There's an interview, a Benny Benjamin interview that I
Mhm.
saw, where they asked him who was his favorite musician. Benny Benjamin, everybody knows, is the drummer at
Yeah.
Motown,
Yeah.
and or one of them, and his answer was Tito Puente.
Well,
Yeah, you know.
there you go.
So I know that everything was
It's
every,
in there. It's just right in there. You cannot separate it. You cannot take it out. You cannot have one without the other,
exactly.
basically. So that is an important takeaway. That's an important realization to come to, because very often, as the music business deals with a lot of genres. It deals with a lot of, sometimes voluntarily and sometimes involuntarily dividing uh, styles, dividing genres, dividing people up, dividing audiences up,
Mm-hmm.
But if anything, this Afro-Cuban influence on pop music, on rock and R&B, on all of it, shows that it's one big melange. It's one
Yes,
big, thing that is all one, right? And without one ingredient, it wouldn't be what it is right now. So that's
exactly.
that that's a very, very important realization to come to. And unfortunately, I believe that it doesn't always get it doesn't always get presented that way. You know,
Right.
it kind of gets presented. Well, you had the big band era over here, and then you had the bebop over here, and then you had this over there, and you had Kai
Mhm.
54 over here. But it's not that there was an cross pollination going on, and
Right.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
would be that's something that needs to be pointed out.
often those guys they all played during the 52nd Street.
Right.
During the bebop era, all the jazz shows they all played the same venues.
Right. Right.
Sometimes alternated.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Remember,
You're absolutely right.
I got a lot of stories from Bobby Rodriguez, who was like a god to me. He was the
Exactly.
king of Latin bass back in from the 40s
Right.
all the way through the 90s. He
Right.
worked and was one of the most recorded bass players on the scene, and
Right.
at least at the New York end.
Right. Right.
He did and he tells me stories, man, when he was a kid in Macho band, maybe 1950, 1951. After finished playing the set, Oscar Pettiford standing off on the side, ready to go on stage.
Mm.
And Bobby had
Mm.
played this is a song called CC No No. There's a couple of versions around. The recorded version doesn't have the bridge,
Right.
but on a couple of radio shows that came out on CD, what's his name? Sid Symphony or
Okay.
Symphony
Symphony
Sid.
Sid. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. He a couple of his radio shows that were recorded and were released on CDs. They play the bridge, and there should be a bass solo on the bridge. So Bobby says they finish playing that song, they get off the stage, and Oscar Pettiford, is on the side. He said, "Hey, can you play this?" And Oscar Pettiford starts wilding on the bass. And Bobby's like, he said, "Man, I can't play like the great Oscar Pettiford, but I tell
Right.
you what, you want to play the next set with Machito?" Man, you mother, man, he split. Well, those guys, also Bobby Rodriguez played with Ella Fitzgerald and Ray Brown. They were great friends.
Right. 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 Right.
Ray Brown at Birdland, he said, or the Palladium. No, it was Birdland. He
Mm.
says, "Hey, Ray Brown goes to Bobby, who Bobby met when Ray first came into town, like in
Mm.
1947. They
That
were
is
they were
crazy.
the same age, they were
Right.
like
Right.
47, about 20 something. In the 40s, yeah, 20 something.
Yeah, probably running
Yeah,
partners, probably just hanging out on the town,
yeah,
getting gigs, moving gigs from one to the next to the next to the next. It's
exactly.
what
Yeah,
it's what you do, of
yeah,
course.
that's what the scene was like back in the day.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
So one day the piano player doesn't show up for a gig. It was with a trio, and Ray says he runs to Bobby. Said, "Bobby, can you help me out?" And Bobby's like, "I don't know how. I don't play piano." He said, "No, no, no, no. I'll play piano. You play the bass."
Oh, get out
And
of town.
Bobby said, they had some charts, but he knew a lot of music was the popular music of the era. So
Of
he knew a
course.
lot, and he did gigs like that with them on
Mm,
several occasions. I don't
that
know
is
who the
incredible.
pianist was, but
And it's a funny thing you bring that up because I used to live uptown, right? I used to live in Harlem, and like my foray into Afro-Cuban music came via the Rivieras, Phoenix and Mario Rivera.
right,
I knew
okay,
them from various hanging out at clubs and whatnot, and then I played a bunch of gigs with them. But the thing that always struck me, be it the Upper West Side or then further up in Harlem and Washington Heights, when you went and played in those clubs, and I would imagine it's the same nowadays. Um, People who came to the clubs had such an complete knowledge of the music and the lineage. That totally blew me away. Like they were like, yeah, I heard what you did, and you took that from Paul Chambers. You know,
yeah,
you know what I mean. And it
yeah,
would it would be like an Afro-Cuban gig, and we're playing Montuno or whatever, and Phoenix would beat out the clave on
of
my shoulder, and I would be, I would have to do like a solo or whatever, and I put some of what I know in there, right? And
course, yeah.
people and people catched it, people
Mhm.
totally just caught it, and noticed it, and grew up listening to the music, like I would imagine you did. Um, and so that the the wealth of the culture that still exists in those neighborhoods is incredible, and is really something to experience, that I had never experienced before. Like,
Right.
you don't walk down the street and you talk to someone in the bodega and they know, yeah, that is Mark Anthony, and that is, guess what, that's Ruben Rodriguez on bass. So it's for real. Like, that really happened,
Wow.
that's a real, like, people really do pay attention to their culture and
Hmm.
represent their culture. It's very, very important to them. You mentioned the great Bobby Rodriguez, and I wanted to bring that up because we had talked about that previously, that he
Hmm.
was a big influence on you. And so my question to you is, I do hear that a lot of times, that people have, and I've said that in interviews as well. This guy's influenced me a lot. I've
Hmm.
taken a lot of stuff from here, taking a lot of stuff from there. What does that actually mean to you? What does his influence mean to you, and how did you take what he did and put it into your output?
Wow.
I
Well,
mean, it's understand. I totally understand. That's a big question, but
no, no,
if
no. But yeah, I can tell you exactly what he did for me. When I was, I had the pleasure of meeting him early on in my career. So I was
Mhm.
already playing like maybe 3 years, 4 years when I met him.
Right,
I had a gig at a place called Dante's in Queens. It was like a catering hall,
right,
and after the gig, he's on a break because there were like a bunch of rooms and they all have weddings and parties and stuff. So I was playing in one room, he was another. Anyway, he comes up to I was playing. He stands right next to me. I didn't know who he was
mm,
until after we finished the set. The band leader says, "You know who that guy was standing next to you?" And he told me it was Bobby Rodriguez. I went looking for him. I went into all the parties
right,
and found him. He was already
mm,
playing his set, but I told him, when this is over, I like to speak with you, say hello to you. So
right.
that I did. I helped him with that B-15. You
Mm.
remember the Rampage B-15s? They weigh about 75 pounds. I helped
Oh
him
yeah,
put trunk, and I was a teenager still, so I can pick that up with no problem.
right.
And I don't know so much about now.
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, but I saw you thinking it.
I was like, no, man.
So
I was like, oh man, I'm not saying it. I'm not.
so I basically became his band boy.
Right.
I would call him during the week, like Monday or Tuesday, and find out what they were playing that week, so that I meet him at the club and whatnot, and carry the instruments and stuff, set up the amp and the bass,
Mm.
and take my lesson. Sit down next to him
Right.
and,
Right.
and take my lesson. Just watching and listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What he brought to the table, he was. I mean, there was a bunch of that. He was heavily influenced by Cachao as well. Cachao
Right.
was trained, and Cachao, half of Cachao's family or more are bassists, including his mother. His
It's
mother was a bassist. Yeah.
crazy.
So but that Cachao style of playing, which was more small group,
Right.
rather than big band. Bobby was, he played a big band.
Right.
So it was a little more liberty and a little more freedom for Cachao to develop his thing. Bobby, on the other hand, he was a little prettier, like Cachao was like more percussive.
Right.
But uh, Bobby's style was more melodic.
Right. Right.
See,
Right.
so as opposed to playing a tonic and a dominant, always like they do it like a Latin music, the 5-1,
Right.
5-2-5-1-1-2-5. So Bobby would spell out a chord.
Right.
If it was an E minor, he'll play the E with a G as
Right.
opposed to a B. So he will play E, G, and go into the, moving into the leading into the chords,
Hmm.
without having to play always the fifth.
Right.
You know,
Right. So he
so
took a more
yeah,
melodic approach to
right, more melodic approach to the tumbao, to the accompaniment.
Okay.
Not talking about solo, but he and that's the thing that drew me to his style.
Right.
It
Right.
was a little prettier,
Yeah.
and the approach, and also I really really dug his sound above anybody else's, even on the
Check that
jazz.
out.
You know,
Check that out.
had a beautiful sound.
Mm. Mm, mm,
So
mm, mm.
and that he told me, it's like, you see that thing? He used to point to the amp. You see that? Let that do the work. You got to play light. You got to get a pretty sound out of the instrument,
Mm. Mm, mm, mm,
and
mm, mm.
then let that do the work. So he
Right.
used to the amp B15. Well, he used to set it with the bass and the treble all the way up, and
Mm.
then he would adjust the volume accordingly.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's great, man. I wish you would have told me that. I
yeah.
wouldn't. I wouldn't
I,
have those high action.
no, he used to use high action
Oh,
too,
he. Oh, he
but
had. Okay.
but he used to, you remember at that time it was gut strings.
Yeah. Well,
And he
that's
used the lightest gauge. He used to use the R tone. He said
okay.
39 on the G. It was
Mm.
the lightest gauge at the time. But he had to get his finger underneath the
Mm.
string to pluck it so he can
Okay.
get the punch. He said that's how you get the punch.
Right.
There's a couple of videos. I think I sent them to you. A couple of videos him playing not the acoustic but the baby bass, and you can see his hand
Right.
doing
Right.
exactly. And he would hardly move his hand. He would just move his wrist
Mm.
and move his wrist, and that's how he get the sound.
Mm. 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 Mm.
So
Mm. That's
he always
crazy.
told me that. And
So you took sound from him. You took the melodic aspect of playing
right.
from him, right? Um, I know that you play upright as well, but you're also very prolific on the electric bass. And I was wondering, like, has that somehow, like the sound that we were just talking about, Bobby Rodriguez's
Mhm.
sound? How is that? How have you been able to move that into the electric bass? Because I mean, there are two different instruments, so
Yeah, for sure.
you know,
I mean, they do the same function,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, two different sets of muscles for each.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
So with basically the same concept, of accompaniment and using the melodic. But then, with the electric bass, I had other influences rather, like Jameson,
Right.
uh, um, Chuck Rainey, Jerry
Mm.
Jamont, who I studied with for a while,
Check
you
that
know,
out. Okay.
uh, and there are a couple of on the Latin scene, By Valentin and Sal Cuevas.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, who brought it? Sal brought it the funk,
Right.
the slapping technique and all that stuff to. He put that in clave and brought it into the music, which
That's
was
crazy.
he was phenomenal at that. And
It's
so those
it's
are
it,
heavy influences.
it's kind of blowing my mind that you bring that up because like those are the, the notes that I wrote out because I've been listening to a lot of your recordings, right? And the one thing that they the one thing that I'm noticing all over is like, okay, the sound is incredible, right? The sound of the basses it's incredible, whether it's a baby bass or whether it's the electric, whether it's fingerstyle or slap, right? There's like some recording, I believe, where you're even tapping, perhaps. At least that's
It
what it
could be.
sounds,
It
you
could
know,
be.
it sounds like. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is like, how did you take all of these techniques, so-called non-traditional techniques,
Mhm.
and put them into this music? Keeping in mind that a lot of the ensembles that you play with don't have a drum kit, and that's also like that in and of itself brings its own set of difficulties and or where we have to adapt sound wise, technique wise, perhaps. But that I wanted to kind of shed a light on that as well, because I I don't hear that anywhere else. Let me put it this way. I don't hear anyone else playing like that. Um, but right there in your output in Afro-Cuban music or in this Afro-Cuban pop sensation, all of
Right.
a sudden there it is. So that is something that I wanted to talk to you about.
Right. Well, remember, predominantly what I do and the scene that
Right?
I do, doesn't really involve the drum too much. Lately, last maybe 30 years this way, maybe oh no, actually more, maybe about 50 years. The kick drum and the snare, they've incorporated it into some certain things,
Okay.
you know. But to be honest, back in the 40s and 30s and the 40s, there used to be a drum set in the Latin bands. Machito had a drum set.
Oh, check
And
that out.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, they all had drum sets because they used to do different type of gigs. You know, sometimes do like the high society gigs when they had to play other stuff, foxtrots and
Of course.
and whatnot. So the drum, you know, the whoever the timbal player was, because that's what that's what you see a lot in Latin music, timbal, the conga and the bongo,
Right.
and
Right.
of course the timbal bell and the bongo bell. So whoever played timbal in Machito's band, Puente played drums, and
Right.
that stuff was about 15, 16.
Mm.
You know, there's a couple of pictures, and they actually some videos of him playing drums
That's
when he was
crazy.
a teenager still, or early 20s. Yeah, there's some videos exist.
Talk about a life in music. Like this
Yeah,
is this
exactly.
pretty
So
incredible.
the drums, were part. The drum set was part of that coming up in the 30s, 40s, maybe the early 50s, and then the mambo era came about,
Right.
and there was no drums. There were no longer drums. You know,
Right.
maybe they weren't doing the high society gigs anymore, or
Right.
not. They had other bands they could call, for the swing and the foxtrots and whatever and whatnot. But so, but then later in the 70s, it kind of came. They use they brought back like the bass drum, the kick drum, and the
Right.
snare along with the timbal setup.
Oh,
You know,
check that out.
there's a
That is
gentleman,
so.
Nicky Marrero, who's my neighbor, lives down the block,
Mm, mm, mm,
who
mm.
along with the Fania All Stars back in the early 70s, kind of brought that back. And Nicky was born here, and Puerto Rican parents. I think he's 70. He just turned 70 this year.
Mm.
And he studied at Jazzmobile with all the jazz cats back in the day. He told me he studied with all the cats.
Crazy.
So
Crazy.
yeah, so he knows the language,
Right.
but he
Right.
was able to play both. So he kind of brought that stuff back, and now we, electronic. A lot of guys do the stuff that I've done on some records that maybe you heard. Did I just see a butterfly out there?
I don't know. It is possible.
Can you imagine? Anyway, so a lot of the stuff is electronic.
Right.
The kick drum stuff and all that is electronic, and oftentimes is added after the fact.
Got it.
See, so I'm
Got
not
it.
playing along with a drum when I'm recording a lady. I ain't playing along with nobody when I record. Everything is just in a home studio by myself.
Right. 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 That is.
It's
I mean,
boring.
that is. That is. It
Yeah.
is. It's.
It is what it is.
Yeah. 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 You gotta. Do it one way or another. But sure. This. There is. I do appreciate the convenience of being able to record at home. And people sending me files, and I'm kind of, well, damn, this is cool. I can be
Yeah.
in my PJs and record
Right.
bass. I mean, that's pretty.
That is cool. Yeah.
That is cool. Nevertheless, in terms of an interaction of between other musicians,
Yeah.
that's
That
really
is the part that
difficult.
I miss the most.
Of course.
Actually,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
these are the times we're in now. So
Mm, 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 mm.
ain't nothing we can do about it.
Right.
But
Right. Right. Right.
so yes, so a lot of that stuff, just like I said, came about maybe when I started doing a lot of recording on the salsa scene. Maybe it was about 30 something years ago, maybe 19. I think in 1988 was when I really kind of you played on. It's like when you play on the thing that hits on a song that hits, then everybody looks for you.
Right.
Everybody
Right.
wants to try to get that sound. Oftentimes, it's impossible because that sound wasn't just me alone.
Yeah.
It
There's
was
a
there were
combination of.
other guys.
Right.
Three
Right.
percussionists, a piano player, and myself. So it's not like I could, you could replicate or put that thing or force that thing onto something.
Right. 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 Right.
But oftentimes, if they would hire the 4 or the 5 of us.
Right. Right.
So
Right. Right.
so then we can, try to. Then you got to make the song work. That's
Right.
nothing.
Yeah.
If it don't work, the song, man, it don't work.
Right.
But
Right.
but when I started doing that, keyboards and all that stuff were the thing.
Right.
And the electronic drums and whatever the sounds they can get out of that stuff, they trigger it with a keyboard or whatever.
Right.
And all that got incorporated. Plus, the guy I was working with, who's my compadre, he baptized my oldest, Sergio George. We kind of grew up together in the scene, and he's like a super mega producer now.
Mm.
You know, it's been for the last 25, 30 years. He's done, you know, he's the one that does Mark Anthony's, all of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So he and I've been playing together for, you know, over 30 years. So
That's crazy.
he was also raised in New York, you know, born
Right.
and raised in New York and influenced, but you know, got the same influences we got. You know,
Right.
we heard music in the street
Right.
and in the house. You know, his parents are Puerto Rican,
Right.
so we all grew up, you know, basically the same in the same
Right.
neighborhood. So
Right.
we
Right.
the same influences. So he, you know, he started using all the electronic stuff and putting everything together, the arrangements and the songs together
Right.
and the concepts. And then we
Right.
just, you know, being that we did a lot of live playing when we were young. So, you know, we understand each other just by a look. We know where to
Right.
take it. You know, we're playing
Right.
as a look and we know where to go. You know, we want to go in and you just follow, you know.
Right, 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 right. So then
Mm-hmm.
the basis for all of that is still coming out of the historical view of the music and how it, you know, kind of merged into this mixture of
Right.
swing and Afro-Cuban music and Puerto Rican influences, and like
Mm-hmm.
that is the basis that you guys kind of brought into the scene. And that also, if I understand this correctly, that is the basis for how, for your aesthetic, for your sound aesthetic on
Mm-hmm.
electric bass. Like that's what you're coming from, basically.
Right. That's my schooling. Yeah.
That's deep. That's really deep. That's really deep, because you know, very often, like, you do end up in a recording situation, and you you know you, at least, you know, speaking from myself,
Mm-hmm.
I try to somehow find my sound within the drum kit, right? And kind of fit in there, right? But if there is, like, unbeknownst to me, like, there's no traditional drum kit as such, I
Mm-hmm.
would be like, okay, well, now I'm not quite sure what to do, right? But it seems that with the background that you experienced with the, you know, big band music and Afro-Cuban ensembles,
Mm-hmm.
that definitely kind of set you up for just taking that and putting it on the electric bass and just going with that. And then, of course, adding the music of your time, or of, you know, slap techniques, whatever, because
Right. Yeah.
that is definitely in there, and that is noticeable. And I, the minutes I started listening to this, you know, deeper, I was like, well, damn, is there anything that they can't put in there? But there is nothing that cannot be put in there. It everything fits, you know. So that
Right.
is that is that is noticed. That is incredibly important to realize. Everything can be put in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
If the style warrants it, then you know we do it or we can do it. You know.
Exactly, exactly. Now, there's one thing that you just touched on, and that I want to ask you, and this is probably going to be the last question for today. And
Mm-hmm.
again, many thanks for your time and for
Thank
your
you.
it's this has been so interesting, and for everyone who's watching and listening to out there, I highly recommend checking out the I highly recommend checking out the playlist I put in the description of the video, because that was curated by Ruben Rodriguez. And check that out. It's got great music on there. One thing that I wanted to ask you, and that is your long term affiliation with Mark Anthony.
Right.
And that is something that, you know, is not, that might seem quote unquote normal. I don't like the word normal, but that seems like normalcy to you. But
Mm-hmm.
that cannot be considered normal in any
Right.
other sense of the word,
Right.
right? Um, Nowadays, you don't have a lot of situations like that where either an artist, you know, has the fortitude to stick with the same musicians, or there is like sort of a mutual give and take or whatever it is. And so I wanted to ask you about that affiliation, about that
Right.
gig, about that job. I'm sure that
What?
in the meantime it's more than a job, you know. This
Right. Yeah.
probably family.
It's
That's
an
I would
adventure.
it's
The old Army commercial is more than a job.
Yeah, it's an adventure.
Yeah. Well, check it out. You know, we grew up together, Mark and I.
Check
He
out.
lived like half a block away.
Get out of town.
Yeah, I used to hang out in his house when we were kids. I mean, I think I'm about 4 or 5 years older than he is.
And
But I went to
you were born here in New York. Is that right?
yeah, 7th Street and First Avenue, Metropolitan Hospital. Yeah, and I lived in this era. I mean, I lived a lot of places, and I lived in East Harlem till maybe 1969. Went to Puerto Rico. My dad took us out there and lived there 5 years, and then we came back to East Harlem again. And we were in East Harlem all my life. I've been in East Harlem.
Beautiful.
The Wagner projects, and then I moved to Metro North on 100th Street and First Avenue. And that's where I went to school there. I met the bass there, 1976, right. I think it was September 76. Around there, I met the upright bass, and then in January of the following year, 77, the school got a bass guitar, and then I was in because my father plays guitar. I don't know if I told you that he plays classical guitar and stuff, so I knew a little bit of guitar.
Right, right.
But just the bass, I don't know the responsibility of it. It just led me to that instrument.
Yeah.
Mark had a band singing in Spanglish with his well, he's the youngest, with his older sister Yolanda, who's not working for him. And Yolanda was in school with me too, but we were in separate grades. So a friend of mine recommends me to a producer that's doing a project with 2 kids. Brother and sister Spanish. It was them. He said, "Hey, let's." I did an audition. He said, "Hey, man, the kids live around the corner. Let's go." And we went there, and then I saw Yolanda, and then I met Mark. And so we've been friends ever since. It was the early '80s.
That is
before
crazy.
We had a career, but he was always talented.
Yeah. No, it's living uptown. You could hear him. You could hear his recordings. You could hear you playing everywhere uptown. Like this, it was coming out of bodegas. I lived on 143rd between Convent and Amsterdam, right? And Fairway Supermarket was down on 120,
130, something like that, right?
125th, right?
Yeah.
So I would go once a week. I would go there. We would go there, get groceries, and then take a car service back to 143rd Street. What's playing in the car service? Mark Anthony and Ruben Rodriguez on bass. And the driver is telling us, that's Mark Anthony. He's really good. And that's Ruben Rodriguez playing the bass.
There you go. Wow.
No.
I got a couple of friends that drive cabs, so maybe if she keeps you like this, maybe I'll do Uber.
So that's fantastic.
Our conversation goes back many years. I've been lucky. Hey, I tell you, Tito Puente told me once, or told me several times. He says, "In this business, I'd rather be lucky than good."
Check that out.
I can say that I've been lucky. Made a living.
Well, you're also damn good.
You got to put in your time because it's first who you know and then what you know.
Right.
So you got to be able to do the job. And you get called.
Yeah. The what is. Let me just for the people who are watching this. Last week at the panel discussion, Ruben was a guest of mine. And another native New Yorker, Conrad Adderley, was a guest of mine, and another native New Yorker, Francisco Centeno, was a guest of mine.
Bad boy.
No shit.
You gotta get him.
Well, oh hell yeah! I'm trying to get him. Buddy Williams says hello, by the way. He's on the chat. So my point was that. Ruben and Conrad, without me asking them for any details, without even thinking about it, were able to list several of Francisco Centeno's recordings. And that, in my opinion, is exactly where you need to be at. Like that's the kind of I don't want to call it research because you guys don't research that. Like for you guys, this is normal. This is interesting. This is your life, right? But that's the kind of involvement that it takes, in my opinion, that sometimes or very often is overlooked. Like, know who these players are, know who the heavyweights in your city, in your town are, because they are out there and they're doing their thing, and they've been doing their thing for a very, very long time.
Right.
So I just wanted to bring that up from last week, because that really struck me as like, yeah, you guys were just like, yeah, and then you did this, and then you did that, and then there's this recording, and there's that recording, and you sound awesome on this, and you played that bass on that recording.
Yeah. Yeah, Conrad and I used to get records. He used to come to my house when we were kids.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and he in the early '80s, we used to listen to music in the house all day
yeah.
and play and stuff. You know, and Francisco was on a lot of those things. You know,
Right,
I mean,
right.
he was one of the cats in New York. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
Neil Jason. There was a bunch of cats, but you know, the thing that struck me about Francisco is that you can hear a note and you know it was him. He had personality. A lot of guys, you know, actually all the guys that I mentioned just now had personality. You know, like you
Right,
can do one note and pop, or one thing or one phrase, and that's so and so.
right.
Bernard Edwards was another one. You know,
Who's that?
Bernard Edwards.
Oh, yeah, yeah, Chic. Yeah,
You know,
of course,
yeah, and
of course.
you know there were so many guys that were coming up, and so many bands and bass players. They were bass players.
Right,
You know, that
right,
played the bass and knew the function of the instrument and the
right,
rhythm. You know,
right, right.
held down the groove. You know, not the like pentatonic scales every other bar and shit. You know, like you see a lot on social media these days. But you know, holding it
Right,
down. You
right,
know?
right,
So
right, 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 right.
everything was like that. You know,
Well, I think that part of that is also like this mentality that you kind of, um it is incredibly functional. So if you're in a situation where you have to play, um say, 4 sets a night, and you need to make sure that people are dancing,
Mhm.
you better be able to hold it down. You better be
Exactly.
able to hold that groove. And for what it's worth, I know we are different generations. Like, I was born in 72, right?
Mhm.
So it's a completely different story, and on the other side of the world. But I was able to a certain degree, absorb a little bit of that, by doing a variety of gigs, right? By playing a variety of, be it wedding gigs, be it social gigs, be it, tours, whatever, right? You
We
had
all
to you had to hold it down. You had to make sure people dance, and understand that there is an art in doing that, right?
exactly
uh and that, I think, is there is, and especially now with the situation of the pandemic and whatnot, where smaller clubs are really gonna get hit hard, where it's
Mhm.
there is a real danger of stuff like that, taking a back seat, perhaps, or
Mhm.
we'll see. I always think, like, people always want to dance, people always need that live element, and
Yeah.
even, so we'll see. I'm perhaps optimistic that will come back, or in a different form.
Right.
Nevertheless, the functionality of the bass, the opportunities where you are in front of an audience for a prolonged period of time, and you still need to make them dance, because they don't care whether you just started the set, or you're at the end of
Mhm.
set 3 and you still have another one to go,
Mhm.
and your fingers are perhaps falling off.
Right.
The
Well,
audience.
I remember doing a lot of those gigs, and if you didn't like the second song, if you didn't cut it,
Right,
you do 469. The second song you don't cut it, man. They call somebody else for the
right.
next 3 sets.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah.
you
That's
know, I did that a couple of times. You know, I did those gigs a lot. I did
right.
when sometimes I feel like I'm still doing them, except not in 2020. But
Damn.
you know what? I'm always grateful to have my hands on the bass.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and
and
do
that shows, like, I told, like, at the beginning. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no, no,
at
it's
the
cool.
beginning of the video, I told the audience that the one word that consistently comes to me when I listen to you play is joy.
Mhm.
That is without anything. Like, if whether I understand the music, whether I understand the 2-3 clave or the 3-2 or the montuno, or whether I know where the one is or lose where the one is, none of that really matters anymore. The one thing that consistently comes to me when I hear you play is joy. And that is, that's where it's at for me.
That's
It
deep. Thank you. Thank you. Never
I
looked saw things that like that. Never saw it that way. But thank you very much. Yeah, because I'm like I told you, I'm always grateful that people are calling me for works, especially the younger generation.
right, right,
Some of them keep me busy. You know why? In large part because when those kids were coming up, while some of my colleagues were kind of dissing them, because
right,
they were young, I
right,
always come under my wing. I said, "Oh, come on, let's do, let's go hang,"
right,
and then you talk with them. So now a lot of those kids got high positions, in great gigs, and they always remember this old guy.
right,
You know,
right, right,
they
right, right, right.
buy them a Coca-Cola, or a coffee or whatever they want.
There's
It's
also there's also the
that also helped a lot. Being a good people.
of course, being decent, yeah, being a decent person. That is everything. Very quickly before I let you go,
Yeah.
because I did take a look at your discography, and I implore everyone who's listening to this, who's watching it, check it out on All Music or wherever you can find Ruben's discography. Um, it is really it is fascinating to see, page after page after page of output, right, of albums, of songs, whatever. um the one thing that of course I noticed, like, right away, because I come from a country that part of German speaking Europe, right?
Mhm.
And you also recorded with a German R&B artist. um what's his name? Xavier Naidoo.
Wow, I don't know. I'm gonna have to find it.
That is crazy. That is crazy. So that anyway, like,
It's probably one of those things where a friend of mine produced it or something, and
I
we
would
recorded it, and then
exactly,
it went out. And so, but
exactly, exactly.
I'm gonna hit you up later so you can tell me the name.
Okay. I'll text it to you for sure.
All right.
That is incredible. But the one thing that again that it speaks to is output, is representation, is making sure that you keep working and be seen. And this is kind of part of why I wanted to feature you. And aside from being just a great friend and a fan of your playing, um, is I wanted to make sure that, like, very often when we get presented with the so-called studio scene or the studio
Mhm.
cats or whatever, um, I can't help but it's just always like a bunch of white dudes. That's just very often that happens, right? Yet at the same time, you have a scene, you have with you being the
Right.
example, someone who has been doing this for 30, 40 years, who's incredibly prolific, and needs to be out there, needs to be seen, so other people can, like myself,
Right.
see themselves reflected in that and be like, well, you know this is a possibility for me. This can, I
Mhm.
can do this. And I think that's very important, to just put that out there. And I want to
So,
thank you for being so prolific and being so, cool about this, and making yourself available, for a situation like here. I'm not an interviewer. I don't do this for a living.
no, but listen, man, I want to thank you for the invite and for the last couple of months. You
Of
keep me
course.
entertained that Friday
Oh,
at 2 p.m. You know.
hey, my pleasure. Yeah, for everyone who's watching, like, Ruben has been on these live videos. I want to say, like, almost every week,
Yeah.
since we started in March. And I remember I put one of my very first live videos was like, I opened it up to the audience and I said, listen, if there's anything, I don't know what to talk about, but if there's anything that you guys want to know, you give me a question, I'll just blabber about it, right? And here's Ruben Rodriguez asking me whether I can still do 80 push-ups.
Tell him why I asked that.
I know, because you saw us do it.
I got pictures of it.
Yes. So,
What was the drummer's name?
Clayton.
Huh?
Clayton Craddock.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, we did. And Shelton, the piano player
Back then, yeah.
of that trio, Shelton Beckton, he was also doing them in his dressing room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the walls of that particular theater were not very thick, so sometimes Shelton was getting dressed in his dressing room, and Clayton and I were sharing a dressing room. So I would yell over, "Shelton, you ready? We want to do this," and he would yell back, "Yeah." So we would be in separate dressing rooms doing push-ups before the show just to get our mind and our hearts together.
Wow, that blood flowing.
Yes,
Sure.
yes. You do what you can. I mean, that particular show was we really tried to recreate an authentic trio sound from 1959, right?
No, that was the first show that I ever saw. The first Broadway show I ever saw.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That's totally
I mean, I loved it because I know I know the era and stuff, and
right.
I know the music.
Right,
So
right.
killer show.
Yeah, yeah.
The
That was.
second, I got a funny story about the second Broadway show I saw. It was Motown.
What was that? What was that?
Yeah, when I was subbing on it,
Yeah.
I got tickets. Buddy hooked me up. He got me good, and so I went with my wife. And when I get, the show starts. What's his name? Alvin.
Right.
Alvin Huff is conducting the orchestra, right? So I was like, cool. And then during like about the fifth or the sixth song, I look there again, and it's Jason conducting.
What just happened?
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on. Well, anyway, I spoke to Jason during the break. He said he spaced out. He was, and Alvin was the second keyboard, I guess. He went up and conducted. But it was funny. That was a funny experience. And then I you know what? I haven't seen any other Broadway show since.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, you got to listen. Once we're back up and running, you got to come by. Ain't Too Proud. I think you'll have a great time with it.
Oh, definitely.
I tell everybody, like, come check this out. It's 2.5 hours of nothing but bass, right? And 2.5 hours of nothing but Motown bass. Let me put it this way. So that is pretty cool, and in that regard, it's totally unique. It's
exactly.
You don't necessarily hear that, that often. So it's definitely come by once we're up and running again. It might just be a little while because
I know.
So we're doing what we can. Anyway, Ruben, listen, thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you so much for talking to us, talking to me. I got a lot to work on now. Of course, I got to go back and listen to these recordings over and over again. Well, say again.
More.
Oh yeah, just lay it on me. But by all means, like, don't hold back. That's what I live for. That stuff. That is
right.
It is that important to me. But once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And I'll see you on the other side. I guess when we're back up and in business again. I'll see you at the Rum House. I was telling the audience that story like earlier. There's the word on the street is that when you go through the hotel, the Edison Hotel, right? And there's the Rum House where you guys play every now and then. Word on the street is if the band sounds really good, it's Ruben on bass.
It's a trio, but it's a fun gig.
Exactly. No, it's awesome. It's great. It's great. And I very often I will be you where I'm sitting next to you, getting my schooling after doing my gig.
You hung out one time?
Yeah. So that's
Fun.
I'm looking forward to that again.
Great, man. Look, so am I. Believe it or not, so am I. I hope soon,
Awesome.
sooner than later.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, so let me just let me give my audience my send off. All right, everyone who's watching out there, please say hello, say goodbye to the wonderful Ruben Rodriguez. And as I say every week, be kind, be cool, and remember we only have each other. I'll see you all next week. All right,
Yes,
later.
sir. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thank
Peace.
you.
All
Peace.
right.